I think Gary has now established beyond any doubt he's the strongest player in history. We've debated this for many years, but we debated it when he was 30. Now at 40, to increase his playing strength means he is the strongest player ever in the history of the game. He's been on the top of the chess world for 15 years now, or 16 or 17, I don't know. He's always been substantial.
Here comes this 17-year-old, 18-year-old, who's just slowly being let out into the world by the Soviet sport authorities. And Gary was just smashing people, very solid, senior, professional grandmasters who do not lose in 30 moves at all, ever, and certainly not to 17 or 18-year-olds who are just coming in and sacrificing 3 pieces. And these guys are getting up off the board going, I'm never going to play with him again. That was just a horrible experience, and they were having these he was really traumatizing some players, but it catalyzed the chess world. Suddenly, he was a huge crowd favorite because of the chess. It was just sensational chess to watch.
It's a great history. I'm proud of it, but it's still history.
Starts to that was really
And he just wiped the machine off the board. It was so easy. It was easier than he thought it would have been.
One zero. Gary again. He's, you know, like, this is wonderful. Isn't life beautiful?
The quality of the game was lousy. I mean, Deep Blue, it played like machine. I mean, I don't say, lousy is not the right word. It did exactly what everybody expected machine to do.
And Gary gets into a very difficult position, arguably a losing position.
Right, but I disagree with Fritz. What Fritz is saying...
A lot of the people watching were thinking that Gary would probably get a draw out of it. These are not really the sort of positions that computers tend to play well, where they have a small advantage with no clear attacking line.
And Gary says, aha, I got one chance. What I'm going to do is sacrifice a pawn and get counterplay. All or nothing, sacrifice the pawn.
If the computer just plays like a computer and just goes to try to capitalize and win some pawns and be materialistic, Kasparov would be able to counterattack, and the computer wouldn't see that coming, because they usually just go after material like a cat after a fish and just say, okay, give me that now, it's mine, and I'm going to get, and then that's how they get tricked sometimes.
Computer doesn't take the pawn. Instead, the computer plays a real Karpov-like move.
Instead of winning like 2 pawns, it plays a strategic move which secures the win in a long-term sense. Computers can't do that.
It plays like a Potzer in game 1, and it plays like the greatest chess master and grandmaster in the world in game 2. It doesn't make any sense. Something's happening.
Then he started looking at the game very intensely. Then he found a couple of moves which looked very strange.
It turns out that the position here at the end is actually a draw, and that one of Deep Blue's final moves was a terrible error. because Deep Blue has two choices here. It can move its king here or move its king over here. It picked the wrong place to stab.
Computer had left its king a little undefended. And Gary could have threatened a perpetual check. Not a win, but a perpetual check.
He said, I don't understand how a computer can make some of these wonderful moves that it made and miss a simple perpetual check.
I have to tell you that, you know, game 2 was not just a single loss of a game. It was a loss of the match because I couldn't recover. Because what's happened in game 6? I mean, there was no game. I mean, I didn't want to play. I didn't want to face these guys. You know, I didn't care. I don't thought, okay, if I just play for a draw, if I try to make a draw and we end up 3-3, I have to shake their hands. You know, I have just to smile, and I want just to get it, you know, off my back.
In that final game, he collapsed psychologically from the pressure, and he just played something miserable. His preparation was terrible. It was kind of like, you know, someone coming up and trying to bat, holding the wrong end of the bat. It was almost that bad. It was just the most miserable loss.
I couldn't play when I just felt that we were dead meat. So it's to be like a sitting duck here.
So it was a gigantic success. I think it was much higher, the value to IBM, because IBM, until that moment, when it played against Kasparov in New York, was a sort of a company that supplies equipment to offices. And Microsoft and others and Intel were cutting-edge technology. And suddenly...
After 6 games over 9 days, Deep Blue, the IBM computer, beat Garry Kasparov, considered to be the best chess player in the history of the game.
And whoa! Deep Blue, Kasparov.
The great Russian champion was not a graceful loser.
Maybe he should come to grips with the fact that Deep Blue can do a lot of things that he did not think were possible.
I think, you know, I think this is not a very fair statement, because I don't understand better than anybody else the difference between Deep Blue and any other computer.
There's one explanation. There was the human operator behind the machine. If you just imagine there was a human player behind a relatively weak computer, very powerful in calculation, but totally dumb in positional understanding, then you don't have to invent any more stories. Because what's happened at the moment when machine refused to take the pawns? Very simple. This is a human player. It's not. It shouldn't be Karpov. It shouldn't be. I mean, I'm talking about Karpov sitting in another room. You could have a relatively good player, not necessarily grandmaster, and someone who has access to the screen, a real screen, looks at the moves. I mean, because machine is analyzing it, and you can see the main log. And suddenly in the main log, he or she, whatever, sees that machine is taking pawns, but the king is in danger. The human feels it. You don't have to be a strong player to feel it. So you cut the line. At least you have one red button which says, drop the main log. Bingo. So it's over. You cut it. You raise it. So then the second move comes to the top, which is a better move, because the human could say, oh, fine, it's a huge advantage for white.
Then it got to the point that before game 4, he quit. That was it. The match was over. And they had to convince him to come to the table. Nobody ever said anything about that publicly. I don't even think that's been reported anyplace. But he was fed up.